Thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon with Gill Budgell, who's going to be focusing on setting the foundations of phonics for beginners. This is a series of 4 sessions, and this is the very first session of that series. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to write them in the chat box, and we will do our best to answer your questions. I'll pass it over to Gill now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raina, and welcome to everybody. Do put in the box where you're dialing in from. It's always really nice to see where you are. We've got about 45 minutes to an hour today to think about setting the foundations for synthetic phonics. It's really nice to see everybody coming in. Thank you very much. So just to reiterate what Raina said, this is the first session talking about phonics, synthetic phonics with snappy sounds in particular. And you can see there the dates. So if you really enjoyed today's session, which I hope you will, then you will see on this slide the dates of subsequent sessions, some of which I will be appearing in, and some with Charlotte Rance. So lovely to see you coming in from Ecuador, El Salvador, Jamaica, Qatar. All very welcome this evening. In fact, for me, it's not this evening. For me, it's lunchtime, as you can see from this slide, I'm recording from sunny Barbados. So for me, it's a lunchtime slot. I'm here on the welcome stamp and very much enjoying my time here in Barbados. So just a quick presentation as people are still coming in. Welcome, everybody. Colombia, El Salvador, I can see. Dominican Republic, fantastic. You can see here on this slide, so I won't go through everything in detail, but you can see that I've had a long and steady career in education, both in the classroom, in ESL and ELT teaching, and also in educational publishing. So I've done training and writing of many award-winning resources. So always I've specialised in early years and primary and English language development with phonics, and always UK and international markets. So I really hope today that we can, I'll hold that slide for a moment. I really hope today that we can share some ideas around synthetic phonics. And I'm sure many of you will already know what it is. Many of you are probably already using phonics. So I thought, as a little starter, I just gave you a flash of that slide then. So I understand where you are with your synthetic phonic knowledge and skills. Think about the word phonics just as a little warm-up activity. We usually spell it Phonics. Phonics. How else could you spell that word if you were using different letters, perhaps even letters that we wouldn't normally use in English? How could you spell the word phonics? Maybe you could type in the box for me, and then I can see. Yeah, Huda has already said you could begin it with F, phonics. Let's have a few more. Yes, Susha has put you could begin it with an F and you could end it with a KS. Phyllis has put phonics. You've got to be careful around the vowels. It must say phonics. We need the O sound. Lovely, lovely. Got some good examples coming in here. Thank you. Let me show you my slide. Here we go. So here's some that I made earlier. You can see I really cheated. I began one of the words with double F, which of course we don't do in English. I ended it with CKS. I think somebody did come up with that. You can end with C or X or K. Or CHS, look at this one here, PHONNICHS. Obviously, this is just a bit of fun just to see how experienced you are with letters and sounds in English. And it's not typically something we would do with the children, and perhaps until a little bit later on, because we don't want to be reinforcing misspellings. But it does exemplify what phonics is really about. Myra, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, has done a really nice example there with the slanty lines to represent the phonemes, the letter sounds. So you can see that in the bottom right, I had another go at doing this with a very simple word, with cat. So obviously young children who might be trying to write that word to encode it may have to make these kind of decisions. Does it begin with it begins with k, but do I write that, do I represent that sound with a K or a C or a CK? And if it ends with a T, is it double T or is it just one? And children are making these judgments all the time, and they're making them both while they're reading words and while they're spelling words. So that's just a little starter, but I can see already that many of you are very experienced. So that's great that I've got a good team this afternoon. So what are we going to do? We're going to look a little bit about the core principles of SSP. Now, SSP, systematic synthetic phonics. We'll use this term a lot, and you will see this term a lot when you're looking at resources or attending CPD. We'll think a little bit about curriculum requirements, because in the UK we now all have to teach using systematic synthetic phonics, but your requirements may be quite different if you're not following an international curriculum. We'll think about the foundation skills and knowledge required. That's required of us teachers so that we can teach it confidently. And we'll then look at a lesson sequence, lesson routine, and some of the resources and activities to give a really good idea of how that might look. So having said all that, actually what we're going to start with is what synthetic phonics is not, because I think lots of people have experience, lots of people have a good understanding, but they may not be completely up to date. Like anything, with new research that comes on board, things move on. And so synthetic phonics is not about memory or guessing. So it's not about looking at a picture and guessing that this book is called The Snail. We don't want children to do that. We almost want to cover the picture and expect children to be able to read The Snail Trail. It's not about alphabetical order. We don't tend to teach the letters in alphabetical order. We'll come back to that later, because alphabetical order is clearly very important for different things, but not particularly for synthetic phonics. Similarly, letter names usually crop up in a synthetic phonic program, but more incidentally when we're talking about the grapheme. The grapheme is the letter shape, and we might talk about the letter M to describe its shape. It's not about onset and rhyme. You can see here in the bottom right, I've got a little chart where we used to talk about analytic phonics, where we'd look for patterns. And again, these are really important in language development and fun and enrichment. So street, feet, meet, sheet, sleet, recognizing the eat and the different beginnings. But that isn't systematic synthetic phonics. We want children in this type of phonics to blend right the way through the word. And we'll talk about that a lot throughout the session. And it's also not about remembering sight words. Sight words we used to expect children to remember. And we're not asking them to do that now. We're really asking them to use their phonics to work out even the trickiest words. Use their phonics first as a first strategy. And then continuing the list, what it's not. It's not about seeing and hearing the patterns, as I said, in the onset and rhyme, or listening for sounds in the environment. Is that a bird I can hear? Is that a motorbike? Again, really important skills for very young children to discriminate, but not systematic synthetic phonics. And I've already held up one of the lovely little decodable reading books from Snappy Sounds, the program from Macmillan that we're including today as our examples. These are not rich literary texts. They're not rich picture books. They're not for shared reading. They are pleasurable, as you will see if I even just give you a glimpse. They are lovely to read and fun, but synthetic phonics is not about reading for pleasure. It's about building knowledge and skills. And it's finally, of course, about fun, engaging activities, but not overly elaborate. We don't want to make it too fussy. So is there anything else anyone wants to put in the box about the sorts of things they think it's not? Or shall we get on with what it is? Super. I'm hoping you're still all there because it seems to have frozen a little here. There we go. Okay, so what is the English alphabetic code? What is this thing called systematic synthetic phonics? Well, in this program, you can have these lovely tabletop laminated, very strong mats. And these indicate the very first letters. You can see here, it's S, T, M, P, S, T, M, P. So in this program, we introduce the letters in a particular sequence. That is S, A, T, P, I, N. Why do we introduce the letters in that order as opposed to alphabetical order? Can anyone help me out here? People are adding things very helpfully. Thank you, Myra and Phyllis. Hello, Sophia. Any idea why we prefer not to teach it in alphabetical order? Someone is typing. Let's have a look what people say. I'm sure you know. Okay, Mariam is saying because they're easier to pronounce. Starts with a vowel. The vowels are certainly very important to include. Okay, let me tell you, we are connecting the graphemes with the letter sounds, the letter shape with the letter sounds. But this order, this sat pin order, means, as Alfia has just said, it's easier to immediately start using them. If you've got A, B, C, D, E, maybe, it's quite difficult to create English words from those letters. But if you start with S-A-T-P-I-N or similar, then you can immediately start to put them together to make pin and sat and sit and mat. And that's what we want children to do, to start using those letters and sounds very quickly. That's why we do it. And you can see in the bottom right, this is actually from Letterland. Letterland is a very well-established systematic synthetic phonic program. And they actually don't do SATPIN. They do these letters first, C-A-D-H-M. And that's a little bit trickier to create words. But nevertheless, it's a sequence and it's consistent. And that's what we're looking for, a consistent sequence that enables us to both read and write these initial letter sounds. And writing is important. We really want correct letter formation. Okay, so what do we mean by the English alphabetic code? Well, we've just looked at this, which has told us that quite often we have one letter and it represents one sound. So letter S always says S, and letter M on my slide always says M. And the other thing we need to teach children from the beginning is that two letters may make one sound. So here we have C and H makes one sound, ch, as in chat or chip. And here we have IGH. We have three letters representing one sound. Yes, people are saying digraph. Yes, the CH is a digraph, and that's what we need to teach children. In some cases, we even use that terminology with the children. That's up to you where you, depending on your class and your children. IGH says I. And sometimes we even have four letters, OUGH. And in this case, this might represent, in a word like cough, it might represent off. But here I've put it represents ow, as in the bough of a tree. So you can see that sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 letters representing a sound which we call a phoneme. Now, the other part about the early alphabetic code is that we want children to blend the phonemes, the letter sounds, all through a word. Remember, we're not doing fat, cat, mat. We're not really rhyming. That's valuable for other things, but not particularly for synthetic phonics. So we want to read this word here. We don't know what it says. So we look at it and we say, k, a, t. Okay, I have 3 letter sounds, 3 phonemes in this word. Let me say it again. And this is me as a teacher modelling for the children. Cat. Let's put that on my arm. And eventually one of the children will say cat. And hey presto, we have read the word cat. We've heard those phonemes, we've blended right through the word and we've read it. Now, that's when we're faced with print, but initially very young children can also really benefit from working with oral blending. So if I say to you, do this action, can you write in the box what action you would do? Yes, thank you, May and Susha. Lots of people, Susha, Razan. Yes, clap. Now, this is a very useful activity to do with very young children. You can give it in your instructions if you want them to sit on the mat. You could say sit on the at or sit on the chair. Can you tune their ears into listening to your phonemic oral blending? It's a really important skill to use with the children. And here you can see we've got a practice sheet here on the right hand side from Snappy Sounds, which uses the very early letters from level 1, those sat pin letters, and allows children to read words and play a simple game. Can you get three in a row? So even with those very early letters, we can have some fun. But just as we're talking about blending for reading, so the flip side of that, the other side of the coin, if you like, is segmenting words for spelling. And this is really important that we're doing both the blending for reading and the segmenting for spelling, even from the very beginning. So let's pretend we want to write this word cat. We might even have a picture of this thing in our head, a cat. And as a teacher, I'm going to model for you what you would do with the children. So I want to write the word cat, cat, k-at. Okay, k-at. Okay, I need to write three phonemes. K. Which letter do I write that represents that sound? I'll write a C, a k, right, k-at. What letter do I write to represent the sound a? Oh, I can write a, so I write a. Oh, which letter do I need to write to represent the sound t? I write a T. Now I've got k, a, t. I have to blend those to see if I've written the right word. Let's pretend I wrote b instead of k. I would read it and it would say b, at, bat. Oh dear, no, I didn't write cat, I wrote bat. I need to change the first letter, and so on. You can see that if I model it in that way, you're showing the children how you play with the letters and the sounds to build the spelling of the word. And at the bottom, I've included some higher level examples. So night and blend. So n, I, t, 3 phonemes. But I have to know that the I is represented by IGH. And children are making these choices all the time. They're manipulating the letters and the sounds to build the patterns and our knowledge and skills. So what else is important about the alphabetic code? Well, even fairly early on, certainly in the first 4 levels, which we're really focusing on today, we need to understand that the same sound, the same phoneme, may be represented by different spellings. So here we've got the sound A, which can be represented by AI, by the digraph, the split digraph, as in the word make here, with the K in the middle. At the beginning, where A says its letter name, as in a word like apricot. Here in 8, you can see that A is represented by an E and an I. Very unusual representation. And a common representation here, top left, is day, A-Y. So teaching children that they have these choices to make is very important. But we do it gradually, of course. We do it in a very structured way, which I'm going to show you, because we can't throw this at them all in one go. The other important thing about the English alphabetic code is to say to children that the same letters sometimes need to be pronounced differently. And we touched on this in the slide a couple of slides back. So the letters O-U-G-H can be pronounced as in cough, as in bow, as in though, as in through. And this is really quite tricky. This might be slightly getting on a little bit with our grade ones, but it's an important principle that the children are making these sounds. And finally, the other important principle is that we need to be teaching children to say the letter sounds in a very pure way. That's because when we're blending all through the word, like we need to hear the sounds really clearly so that we can hear how they blend to make a word. So here's a little challenge to make sure I've still got all 94 of you with me at the moment. For which 4 letters do my lips need to touch to pronounce correctly? There are 4 letters in the English alphabet for which my lips need to touch. Often they come quite close, but these 4 letters, they really touch. Oh, May is on the ball completely. Yes, we've got I'll come a little bit closer. Very soft sound. Alfia's picked up the other one, and so has Allah. Wa. Look at the lips. Wa. So this idea of the lips touching, yes, the bilabial, as Naima has put it, I hope I pronounced names correctly, is very important. And in fact, in Snappy Sounds, in the teacher's book, you get this very handy photographic guide to help you, because either you or the children may well be working in one other language or many other languages, and that can make pronouncing some of the sounds very difficult. So it's important that as teachers we model correctly. You can see this slide on the left here. This was a program that I developed for Spanish-speaking children, and they filmed my face and my mouth pronouncing the letters so that there was my face on the screen, which the children thought was hilarious, to help them to know how to move the mouth, the lips, the tongue, whether it was in my throat or on the lips, as we're discussing. So listen to these sounds, maybe say them with me. It would be lovely if I could hear you doing it. I'm sure you'll do it brilliantly. Let's start top left. S, not s. Remember, we're not saying s because we don't want that schwa sound, that sound on the end. Ah. See, my top teeth are on my bottom lip. So the lips on this one are really close, but they don't touch. Very soft sound. 2 sounds, 2 letters, 2 sounds, Q and U. Here, a really difficult one to say well. B, very like P, but obviously B is more voiced. CK, K, K, and finally I. Generally, it's the vowels that cause difficulties when children are bringing other language experiences to the classroom, to their English classroom. So it's around the vowels that we can often have difficulty. So this idea of saying the pure letter sounds very important. Okay, so let's just pause for a moment and think about curriculum requirements. Obviously, you, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're from all over the Middle East and, well, all over the world, actually, North Africa, all sorts of places. So I obviously couldn't research all of those places to know what your curriculum requirements are in relation to SSP. Remember, systematic synthetic phonics. But this is what we say in the UK. In fact, in Britain, for our early years foundation stage. So by the age of 5, we expect children to be able to say a sound for each letter in the alphabet and at least 10 digraphs. Remember the digraphs? 2 letters, 1 sound, ch, sh, th. Those letters, those phonemes. Yeah, PH2. We expect children to read words by sound blending right through the word, remember. We expect them to be able to read aloud sentences and books. And in order to do that, we need, I'm just looking for some books to show you, as I've shown you earlier, we need books. We need simple books that children can read. And we need fiction and non-fiction. So we need lots of practice material for children that use very few letters. We must not ask them to read things that we have not taught. That's not really helping their independence. We expect them to be able to write recognizable letters. That comes back to that letter formation idea, which we're going to talk about again in a moment. Spell words by identifying the sounds in the way that I'd just outlined when we were trying to spell that word cat, remember? And write simple phrases and sentences that can be read by others. So we're really wanting to get children up and running independently, reading and writing and saying and hearing letters and letter sounds quite early in the UK. And I'm wondering what your curriculum requirements are. This is statutory here for us. So we're all very, I'm saying here, I'm in Barbados at the moment, but I'm talking about in Britain at home. So how does that look in a program, a synthetic program, phonic program such as Snappy Sounds that we're talking about today? Well, you can see here in this little chart, this shows you what is covered in the first 4 levels of Snappy Sounds. And it covers those 4 foundation terms. So it talks about short vowel sounds, and those are a, I, o. Consonant phonemes such as s. Letter names, incidentally, as they arise. Then it goes on to things like consonant digraphs. We've talked about those. Ch, and trigraphs, where you have 3 letters for 1 sound, like we talked about earlier. It looks at blending adjacent consonants. So let me give you an example of that. Here's a lovely teaching card. And you can see this is about consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant. So this word is nest. And this word is consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, and it's frog. And there he is. You can cover him if you don't want the children to guess, because we don't want the children to guess. We want them to read the letters. So that's that idea of adjacent consonants is a very important one, and different from past teaching of phonics, where we used to say fra-og. Do you remember we used to do that? Fra-og. No, we don't want to do that now. We want to literally say f-r-o-g. 1 sound for each letter. And you can see then it goes on to long vowel phonemes, a, e, i, o, u, u. And then thinking about suffixes, so how do words end with ing or ed, and reading 2-syllable words. Typically, we've said, or we do say in the UK, about 4 GPCs every week. Does anybody know what GPC stands for? It's very important that we don't use too much jargon, but GPC. Anyone have an idea what that stands for? We have talked about it, or someone is typing, so I think someone knows. Let's just see if the answer comes in. It's nice if somebody does. We've talked about the letter and the letter sound, and GPC stands for grapheme, phoneme, correspondences. So it's the way the letter and the letter sound work together. And typically we might introduce about 4 at a time. And there is some thought now that that's perhaps going too quickly. And certainly for bilingual or multilingual children, we may need to go a little bit more slowly. Okay, let's have a quick catch up on knowledge and skills. Let's have a look at this on my screen. So let's have a quick, I'll model how to do this. I want you, these are the answers around the outside. And as we read the word, I'd like you to say which bubble is the answer. So let's do the first one together. In fact, Alfia has already put grapheme phoneme correspondence as the answer to the GPC question. So which of these bubbles represents the grapheme phoneme correspondence? Well, in this instance, it's this one. Letter S represents the sound S. So that's the dark blue. Okay, which is the answer for short vowel phoneme? Which of these shows you a short vowel phoneme? Just write the colour. You can write the colour of the bubble if you like. Yes, this green bubble. Okay, consonant phoneme. Can anyone find me a consonant phoneme here? The consonant phoneme. Light blue. Excellent. Thank you, May. Okay, and blending to read. Which bubble shows you blending to read? Remember, you're looking at the word and you're blending the sounds. Which colour bubble shows you how to do that? You're looking at the word and then you're breaking it into its phonemes, its letter sounds. Yes, red. Great. Okay, we're looking at that. Actually, it's yellow, night. We need to look at the word first and then hear the sounds. Yes, yellow. Okay, and then segmenting to spell is the red one, which Anna put up first. So that's the segmenting to spell. What about the consonant digraph? Which colour bubble is that? The consonant digraph. I think you know this one. Grey. Yes, thank you, Radwa. And adjacent consonant. Which one shows us a word with actually adjacent consonants both at the beginning and the end, this word? Which one is that in this bubble? Which colour? Orange, thank you, lovely. And finally, long vowel phonemes. Which one shows us some long vowel phonemes? That's this light green one. There's a slight delay between my asking and you responding. That's just the time, I think. Tricky words. Where are the tricky words? There's only one left. Yes, it's the black one, Razan. Thank you. Lovely. So it's really important that we as teachers know this language and we're confident and we can use it correctly. Here's the answer sheet, as it were, just making sure that we know we're using the language in the same way. And we can decide how much of this language we actually want to use with the children. That's really important too. If we're not sure and we want support with this, this is a page from the Snappy Sounds Teacher's Book. And these videos are professional development videos to support you. So if you're feeling unsure about a particular area, whether it's pronunciation or what is a decodable book or how to do some sort of review, these are very short 1 minute to 3 minute videos to support you with your professional development. So that's a really lovely feature within Snappy Sounds. Okay, so what else is important in our phonic knowledge and skills? We touched there in that quiz we did on the and who as tricky words. Now, we used to say they're sight words, you just have to learn them. And some children are able to do that. But what we like to say in systematic synthetic phonics is use the phonics first and then give a little jiggle to try to get to the word. Use your phonics to try to read the word. And also, some words are only tricky because we don't yet know the rule. So if we know, for example, that the letter E can sometimes represent the sound E as well as E, then words like he, be, me, we are no longer tricky because I know the rule. I know that letter E sometimes says E. And if I say he, be, me, I think, no, that doesn't sound right. I know I can try this other pronunciation. So that's a really important point, that yes, some words are harder for us with phonics, but we should still try and use phonics as our first approach to decoding them. So what does a lesson sequence look like in Snappy Sounds? And why is it important? Well, if we have a really clear lesson sequence, this is the lovely sequence from Snappy Sounds, which appears on a card. I don't have that card now, but it looks exactly like this. We need to get ready to learn. We need to review our learning, and we need to be explicit about the lesson objective. They're all things we do anyway. Whichever lesson we're doing, we should be beginning our lessons in that way. But then we say the sound, we hear the sound, we write the sound, we read it, we spell it in a word, we review our learning, and then we practice. What does that really mean? Well, on these cards, which I keep showing you, here's another one. Here's sh for ship. What I haven't shown you is that on the other side, and that's what you can see here for ship, but also on the screen for Z, for zip, are my teaching notes. So these are a very nice way to guide you through your lesson sequence, because you can be showing this to the children and reading the notes on this side. So it's really supportive for you as a teacher. And you can see from the example on the screen that it follows that lesson sequence we just talked about. Revision, lesson objective. What is it we're trying to learn? Let's share that with the children so they're really clear, even little children. Say it, hear it, write it, read it, spell it, review it, go and have some practice. That's our lesson sequence. And here's some lovely materials to help. We're going to go through each of those stages now in the lesson sequence. So here you can see another one of those cards, one of these. And you can also see how we've got some flashcards. So reviewing previously taught letters and sounds or words, flashcards can be very helpful for that. Here we've got this tabletop mat, which I showed you at the beginning. Pictures to support one side, and on the other side, just the letters. And again, if these are on the tabletop for the children, it's a very handy way to quickly practice the letters. Point, say, share with a partner. And they're very nice and sturdy, those. And bottom right, I've put something in that's a bit fun, because there are so many different ways you can do this with the children. These are ping pong balls. So they're quite inexpensive to buy, and you can buy them already printed with letters and including the grapheme, the digraphs, vowel phonemes and long vowel phonemes. You can see they're all there. Or you can buy them and with a non-washable ink, write the letters on. You can put them in a hat or a bag and shake them up, and children can pick them out, and whichever one they pick out, they have to practice. And obviously you're only putting in the bag the letters that you and sounds that you have already taught, because this is the review. And then you're introducing the new letter. And let's say today we're going to introduce the sound G. It's a guttural sound in my throat, G. And you can see here that this is the little, from the teacher's book, this is the little routine. I do it. So I'm going to say, I'm going to show you the letter. I'm going to pronounce it G. And then we're going to do it. So then we would all do it together with the children saying G. And I'd show it to them, and I'd show them other letters, and they would keep saying G. And then again, I would do it. I might say, oh, look, this is a baby goat who can say the word goat. Let's do it together. So it's an I do, we do before you do independently. And that's a really nice little classroom routine to hang on to that you'll find throughout Snappy Sounds. If it's the word Google, you might not want to use that word, but it's a good example of a common word, and it's got two G's in it. Google. Can they hear? Can they clap when they hear that letter sound in a more complicated word? And here, this little extract bottom left, this is from Letterland actually, and they have little mnemonics to help children to say. So can you feel the heat on your hand when you're pronouncing that word? And here we've got some letter fans that you can splay out, and you can quickly show the children the letter to practice saying them. Writing the letters is really important too. We really want children to be able to write those letters accurately and correctly. So looking for a program that gives you guidance on how to write the letters correctly is really important. But little children often need to make these in a large gross motor way before they pick up a pen and make a small movement on a small piece of paper or in a book. So you can see here this girl has a streamer. You can do it with a silk scarf. Get the children to make some really big movements, write the letter, Gah, scribe it in the air. You can do it as skywriting too. You can write it with a twig in the sand or a stick or anything that you can pick up on the beach or in the woods. This little girl is writing on the vertical plane of a whiteboard. Remember, that's different to writing on the horizontal level. It's very difficult. You are asking children to do different things, whether you write them up on the whiteboard or on the flat on the paper. There are now apps as well. This one is Caligo, a new app for practicing handwriting on a tablet. So technology is beginning to creep in, but ultimately it's about handwriting and writing those letters correctly. The next part of the lesson would be to use the letter G in words, and we're blending right through the word. Remember, we're not just saying G and then as or G app. We're saying G as, gas, G app, gap. And flashcards are really handy for doing this because you can go quite quickly with the children and they quite like it. Maybe if they read it correctly, they get the card, and then perhaps in a group, the winners are the ones who've got the most cards. Notice at the bottom, I've got this word. I've got the letter at the beginning, I've got the letter at the end, but I've also got a nonsense word. This is quite controversial, but in our UK classrooms, part of our phonics screening check is that we ask children to read nonsense or alien words, and that's just to check their decodability. It's probably not a fantastic idea to use this with multilingual or bilingual children. I think it can get very confusing. They're already learning so many new words in cultural contexts, so it's not my favorite thing to do. But if you just want to test decoding skills, then it works. Then we go on to segmenting. So we're thinking about writing a word with that new letter, G. So we want to write the word gap. So we say the word gap, G, A, P. We model saying the sounds. We identify the number of sounds in the word, G, A, P, 3. And then I model how to write G, A, P. And then I blend it like I did at the beginning with that word cat to prove that I can write gap. He's got a little gap in his teeth. And then we do it together, and we might do it with more words. Perhaps we do it with some of these words that we've just read. And then we can dictate words. So we move quite quickly into this segmenting, as you can see. Now, we also can use all these different types of materials. And again, I've pulled from different types of resources. We can use flashcards. These are actually from Letterland, but Snappy Sounds has some very simple, clear, just the letter flashcards, which are very nice to then hand out to the children. Here you can see bottom left, the children have the cards and they're coming up to the front of the classroom, and they are organizing themselves in the order to spell the word. So if they're going to spell the word sad or gap, they have to get themselves in the right order, and then the rest of the children on the mat or in the classroom can read to make sure the children are standing in the right place. So really nice to get them up on their feet, active and learning. This little lad here, he's coming up to the interactive whiteboard. That's another very useful way to use our technology. Don't just keep it for us as the teacher. Let the children have access to it. It's very powerful. Here, the little girl is more traditionally sitting at a table. Looks like it's too high for her to me, but you get the idea that she's perhaps trying to write some words. And these interactive whiteboards, again, they are very popular in classrooms now, but be careful because you don't then end up with a record of what the children have written. Typically they write it, it's great for practice, but then of course you rub it out and then you don't have a record of it, which you might want for your assessment. So that's just a little sort of warning. If you don't have those, it's not the end of the world. So we've done all of that. I do and we do. What else do we need for you do, for the children to actually then begin to do independent practice? Typically, we run out of time. We do all the I do, we do, and then it's, oh, you know, it's playtime or end of the lesson. So it's really important that we do make time to allow the children time to practice themselves. So the most important thing probably is that we give them these decodable books. And you can see in Snappy Sounds, there are some beautiful books, very simple. So this is the first one, Sam, very simple and beautifully illustrated. It doesn't tell a massive story, but it does give a sense of achievement. All of these books have notes at the beginning for you as the teacher. So before, during and after reading. But to keep the phonics focus really, really clear, there's some practice words here, fast phonics, just to review what we've already known. And then it summarises the new phonics. So this is the focus on A. So, and at the end of the story, you get some little notes on comprehension or just talking about what you've read. So some really nice support there in these little phonic readers. And as you can see, really beautifully illustrated. But not just stories, really important that we have non-fiction too. So loads of things, or look at wool. And there are another one I wanted to show you. This is a little bit higher up, thunderstorms. So they can even be photographic. So really important that we have high quality reading books. You can see here that in Snappy Sounds, I've listed the first 4 levels for you because we're here talking about starting with our phonics, early phonics. And you can see that each book underneath on this chart says which sounds it introduces and focuses on. So you can be sure that when you've taught a letter or a little cluster of letters, that you know which book to go to for the children to be able to practice. Have people seen books like this before? I'm sure you have. There are lots available now. Here's a nice look at one inside where we're looking at adjacent consonants. Jen and Zach's Gran is not well. Jen has a plan. I miss Gran's grin. So Nan is obviously not well. And here along the bottom, we've got some more examples of some non-fiction from another publisher. And here we've got an interesting reminder that reading a text doesn't have to be a book. You know, it can be a word, a sentence, or a text. And the text could be on a piece of paper like this. This one says, I spin a tin. And this child has had practice of writing and reading and spelling. So it's not always about a book. It can be varied. I should reference that material. This bottom right material is from a lady called Debbie Hepplewhite. That's her material online. Here we have an e-book. So it's lovely if we have these books for the children to read. And if we have the technology, we can show these books online and we can have audio to support them, which helps with the pronunciation and gives, again, a model for that reading. So what else? Beyond the independent decodable reading books, what else is it? What else is important that we provide for children? Well, we need masses of practice, and it doesn't really matter whether it's an activity worksheet, a workbook, whether it's online and we're doing it together in groups, or whether it's physical or multisensory or take home. There are lots and lots of ideas, and the more we can do, the better. Here's something that's important about working with young children, and that is keeping it active. Let's have a look at this little video. There's one more as well. We'll just watch before we talk about them. They're very short videos, but I hope they give you the idea that many phonic programs include little sounds or mnemonics, little tricks to help the children to remember. Those extracts were from Uruguay, actually, where children were learning English. And the first one is yellow jelly, mix it up. Yellow and jelly were quite difficult words for those Spanish speakers to say. So look for a program that gives you those kind of fun things. These children are very little and they need fun things to do, joining in, and they remember them and can't stop singing them even in the playground when they're playing. The second one, you can see the teacher has put the letters, the graphemes, on the floor. She's doing capital letters here. And the children were standing by their letters and they were listening to the letter that she pronounced. So she was saying the letter sound. So she said S, and the little girl standing by jumped, and all the other children said no. They knew that she'd got it wrong, so they had to go back, and then the teacher said it again, and then the little boy jumped over S. So you can do these kind of activities so that it becomes active and the children are up and not getting fed up sitting too long looking at the whiteboard. So do try some of these lovely ideas. Here's some more. Sorting things into little sound buckets can be very useful. Getting children to run around. This one's at home, look, where similar to the one we've just described, the parent or the teacher would say the letter sound or the letter name, if that's what your focus is, and the children have to run and stand by that letter. Or here, a similar idea, you could do the oral blending idea here. You could actually chalk the word on the playground and then say to the children, listen, d, o, g, and the child has to orally blend that into the word dog and then run to that word. So you can do things like that as well. You can have treasure hunts where you are putting words, let's say with the digraph ch, around the outside play area, and the children have to go on a treasure hunt to find those things and bring them back, and then they have to read them to make sure they've got the right words. Or you can do high frequency tricky words and bury them in the sand, and the children have to find them and then read them with their telescope so that they can really use their blending to read skills. So it's just a few of the things. It's easy to become over elaborate and do things that take up too much time when the curriculum is already packed. So we have to be realistic about how much we can fit in the time available. But they are young, they do need to be involved and active and engaged. So let's have some fun, but not too much. Here's another example. If we're making things, I think when I've worked internationally, I know teachers often like to have things that children can make and then take home and use. But let's always be careful that we're making something that we can use, not just something that's nice to hang up or put on the wall. Let's really make something like a spinning top where you spin it and where it falls, you have to then say the vocabulary item to practice the sound, in this instance, k, sorry, not k, k. So that's the plea, that we are always making things with a focus. We're doing activities with a focus, and they can be fun. They don't need to be always sitting at the table with a worksheet, but that does have its place too. Thank you. Got some really nice comments there that people like those ideas. So do try them. Finally, at the end, remember, we're still going through our lesson because we're doing our independent work here. But finally, we need to review what have we done with the children. We want them to really remember, what did we learn today? What letter and sound did we learn today? Oh, it was the letter G. What letter sound did that make? G. Remember, guttural sound. We learned to write the letter. Who can show us? Can somebody come up, write it on the whiteboard, or can everybody write it in the air if you're still doing very big air letters? We learned to read and write some words with the letter G in them, the letter sound G. Who can read this word? And maybe you write the word gas, and the children, perhaps some volunteers, can use their new skills to read that word. Who can write the word gap? Let's rehearse what we know about how we write a letter using this new letter and its sound that we've learnt today. So I hope that's been really useful for you. What we tried to do in this short space of time is to cover the core principles of SSP, remember, systematic synthetic phonics. We looked at some of the curriculum requirements, and it might be useful for you to go back and look at your curriculum requirements and to see how many of the things we talked about today appear in your requirements. I did that for here in Barbados, and there were some things that fitted quite well with systematic synthetic phonics, and some things that were different. Think about the foundation skills and knowledge that you need as a teacher in order to be able to deliver this really effectively. And don't be afraid to look online for some of the CPD, the professional development that you might need to support you, particularly if you're multilingual yourself. think about this lesson sequence and lesson routine. Keep it really consistent. Have it the same through your classes throughout the school so the children know where they are and you know where you are. And remember that these are very young children and we need to keep it really active and fun for them. So try to keep that sense of engagement with them. Thank you very much. It's been great to look at your comments as I've been talking, and it's been very supportive. If you have any questions, please, I think we've got a few minutes if you want to put any questions into the question box. Otherwise, I will hand over to my colleague, Rainer. And you can see on this slide, if you want digital packs of samples, then these are the emails that you need to use. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gill, as always. Just to say, we do have a few minutes, which is always great. So if anyone does have any questions, while I explain a little bit about further information, you can type those if you do have any questions. So as Gill mentioned, if you are interested in receiving a digital pack or a sample copy of Snappy Sounds as a digital version, then do email us. Or if you are at school and looking to trial Snappy Sounds, we'd be very keen to get in contact. So do email us about that. And also just upcoming information. If you would like information on our resources, do check out our website and also previous webinars. So Gill has delivered a few webinars for us already. So do check our YouTube channel for past recordings of our webinars and also our upcoming webinars. Particularly, this is the first session of 4. So the remainder of the sessions and information will be made available to you by email as well. So do follow us on social media. And if you do have any questions, let us know. Just having a look, Gill, to see if anything has come up.
Oh, yes, there is a question here. Yes. While coming to written work, should the children learn uppercase or lowercase first? In fact, they probably need both because they need uppercase to write their own name, but we generally go for lowercase. That's what normally happens. But they do need the capital letters too. And if you're teaching correct letter formation, then certainly in these early levels, you would cover both.
Great.
Any more questions?
Yes, there will be a session 2, as we mentioned at the beginning. I'll just show you once again some of those dates. You will be receiving a follow-up email with these, but if you do want to know the dates, they are here. So Gill will be delivering a second session in April, which is focusing a little bit more in depth on phonics. And then, as Gill mentioned, Charlotte Rance, who is our regular webinar expert, and she delivers sessions for us for literacy. They will be focusing on a Q&A session and then focusing on a week's worth of Snappy Sounds lessons in August. So I think we will let it go for now. Thank you so much, Gill, as always, and thank you to the attendees. Always fantastic to have the engagement, and we look forward to seeing you in the second session in April. So take care for now and stay safe. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.